presented by Kate Hill, a library services engineer with EBSCO. And as we've been doing today, we're using the Zoom Q&A for questions during the session. Afterwards, we hope you'll participate in the online discussion forum, which again is located on the NASIG website, if you have additional questions or comments about this session. And please note the NASIG's Code of Conduct applies to all discussions and presentations. Links to the forum and our Code of Conduct are also available on the NASIG website. And you can find us on Twitter using hashtag NASIG2020, and we hope to see you there. And we'd like to thank our NASIG sponsors very much for helping make our online conference freely available. And I'm going to now pass this over to Kate.
Great, thank you all so much. I'm gonna attempt to share my screen and you can see my email first, apparently. Hold a second. Here we go. Getting it to the right tab. There we go. Okay, now we should be able to share it. So, share, and then we're gonna go to the present, actually get this full screen. Sorry, I apparently talk through all of my stuff, so that's fine. Sorry, of course, when I'm actually looking at things, I'm like, my brain's now not working. There we go. Hi everyone, I'm hoping you all can see my screen and hear me. I am today presenting on a project that I did not while at EBSCO. I was, till about 3 months ago, the electronic resources librarian at the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. And so what I will be talking about today is in relation to that position. But today I'm going to be talking about some work that we did with focus groups to really explore the growth of streaming media and the use of streaming media at UNCG. And so the general idea is, this is what I'm going to be covering. I'm going to be talking a little bit about what streaming is at UNCG, what the collection looks like and our practices, and then I'll be going a bit into describing what focus groups are, our particular methodology, and then of course the important part, which are the results. And my animal this time, I always have an animal for all of my presentations I give at conferences, is the pika from North America Rockies and other mountains. This last year I was very fortunate to go to the Tetons and I saw one in person. It was one of the best things of my life, and I am reflecting back on that glorious time when we could all travel, and hopefully I'll cheer you up a little bit with adorable lagomorphs. UNCG is a medium-sized public library. We are about public university library. We're about 20,000 students who go there in Greensboro, North Carolina. We have been focused on electronic resources from a pretty early time. We actually, Tim Bucknell there actually created one of the first electronic resource management systems, along with Beth Bernhardt, our former associate head of collections. And so the e-resources have been a very important part of UNCG's library culture, and we've been early adopters. We've also been focusing more on electronic resources in general because our distance education program has exploded. UNCG Online is our fully online program, but we've found that at least half of our students take an online class every semester, even if they're physically on campus. So being able to have online things like streaming media has, in the last 5 years especially, really grown in importance. And of course now it's even more important. So this is what our collection kind of looks like. We started purchasing streaming media over 10 years ago. We were, again, pretty early adopters of having streaming media in our collections with things like Ambrose and DocuSeek, some of the early documentary subscription services. We really have been exploring the many ways to get streaming media and streaming film to our faculty and students. We have traditional subscriptions in which we get access to everything. We've also been doing EBM and EBA, so evidence-based management collections for things like Alexander Street Press and Film Platform. And then we've also been doing mediated service, which means that faculty have to, it's usually only, it's limited to faculty, and faculty have to request that they can have access to a film for a particular class, and then we purchase that individual film for usually a year. And those are for Kanopy and Swank due to high demand and high cost. So we have a lot of streaming media. We've been pretty active in finding out what the new streaming film programs are and purchasing them and experimenting with them. And we've actually seen our usage going quite up in the last 2 years, especially. In fact, in 2019, our Kanopy use, I think a lot of people had this, went up so much that we spent over $65,000 on Kanopy titles, not really planning for that. So our streaming media usage is going way up. We also did a survey that is actually going to be talked about in a paper coming out soon in Serial's review, I believe, that is talking about streaming, that was talking at what faculty know about distance education and programs and electronic resources they can use. And we found that faculty really, though they knew kind of about streaming media, they weren't very familiar with it. So we saw both that usage was going up, but that faculty seemed to have a gap in their knowledge, even though we had put out a marketing campaign about streaming media to get usage up. So we had all of this, and we said the survey that showed faculty were using it but weren't quite clear about it and had a lot of misconceptions. And so we decided that we were going to do focus groups. Focus groups are very useful from a qualitative research perspective, especially after you've done a survey or after you've done a kind of broader examination of the field. Then you kind of do a deep dive into the why of the results that you're seeing. So that's what focus groups are really great for, is understanding the how and why and opinions of the people that, of faculty in this case, but of whoever you're interested in getting the opinions were. So we really wanted to delve that way. Our research goals, we had the very broad research question of, what do instructors need to know about streaming media through UNCG libraries to make effective use of this resource in classes? That was very broad, so we had some specific goals out of this. We wanted to improve our streaming media guide, that's our kind of main LibGuide, and provide better service and discovery, especially to faculty and students. We wanted to make sure that we were collecting the correct streaming video resources for our faculty and students. And of course, we wanted to figure out how we could better strengthen awareness and what methods of outreach would work best for our faculty. So a little bit about focus groups for people who are not as familiar with them. They usually are groups of about, they're a very common method, as I said, of qualitative research. So they are usually small groups, about 6 to 10 people. They're run by a moderator who is there to usually not yell as much as this Pika is, but to ask numerous open-ended questions to get towards the research goal. The goal is to really be free-flowing and organic in conversation. We want to have a dialogue, basically, between the participants in which they build off of each other's statements. This actually can be pretty tricky, though, because you also need to have them keep on topic. And the moderator is really there not as a teacher or anything like that, but as a guide, as a person to help people keep on topic, and as a person to probe if questions are just getting a non-response. We also had observers there. You usually have observers. Observers are usually the people who are actually interested in running the study. The moderator is often someone who is not directly associated with the study, so they have a less of a biased approach. And the observers there take notes, listen, and perhaps answer questions and confusions at the end of the study. They usually run about an hour, and you usually like to get multiple groups. Again, you're also looking for often a bit more of a focused type of collection of participants. You're usually looking at you often are going to be targeting specific people for this, or demographics for this, more than you might in a survey. So I'm just going to quickly go through the kind of questions we asked. These are our intro questions we used to kind of warm up the experience, and also to kind of get an idea of where faculty actually were in their comfort with streaming media, both personally and academically. Then we asked questions about classroom use. We wanted to know, for the first question, for example, we wanted to understand the thought process of why they chose what they chose in terms of content. We were also interested in knowing when they decided on the content and how, so we would know if we were providing instructions for faculty to embed in the right places or link in the right places that they wanted to link or embed, or we knew when to push marketing or content in for updates of content. We also looked at discovery of research. This is basically how do faculty actually find out about things. And then finally, we asked some technical questions that were of special interest to me as an e-resources librarian. I wanted to know if there were any technical errors or things that were causing a lot of problems that we needed to address in a more consistent fashion. So we, in terms of methodology, we tried to get about 5 to 10 faculty for 2 sessions, one during lunch and one during break, and we tried to tempt them to come not with delicious flowers but with delicious pizza and delicious coffee, and then gift cards for delicious coffee. We did this first in the spring semester of 2019, but we didn't get enough people. There just weren't enough people signed up. We tried again in the fall semester of 2019. We got a lot more results this time. So apparently people were a lot more in the mood for pizza in the fall or something. We then, once we kind of got that set up, we did a targeted reach out to faculty. We were specifically targeting faculty who we knew had used streaming media in the past, because that's where our questions were really focused on. So we had the mediated service of Swank for many years and had just started actually mediating our Kanopy service. So we had those emails, and we sent those we contacted the faculty who had requested those films. Myself, along with 2 of our acquisitions folks, also went through our emails and found all of the people who had asked us about getting streaming films. So we had contacted those folks as well. And then we also worked with Beth Bernhardt, as I said, at that point, Associate Dean of Collections, as she let us know who she had worked with a lot in the past about streaming film, and we contacted those faculty as well. So we had, when we got set up, we had, as I said, 2 sessions. Our moderator was Elizabeth Ellis, an intern in our assessment program. And then it was myself and Christine Fisher, our head of technical services. We took notes and watched, and we're probably not as cute as these pikas, but we tried. We also tried, I think we recorded these sessions completely, and we also were there to answer questions at the end, which was really hard. Faculty really liked to ask us questions and wanted confirmation if they were right on something, and you're not supposed to teach during these focus groups, and it was incredibly challenging, but I think we did an okay job. We also got demographic information, specifically looking at the department that the faculty member was from. And we had them, of course, sign a permission form that we could record them. All of this did go through our IRB process. So what worked? Faculty were engaged and had things to say. They kept the discussion mostly on target and were very open to sharing their opinions. Nothing got super off topic, so we feel like our questions, and our moderator, Elizabeth, was amazing. The faculty that did come represented especially ended up representing a wide variety of uses of an experience with streaming media, which was really nice. We had everything from a person who basically just used one thing that a librarian had recommended to her and that she used in her class every year, to people who were very, very experienced finding streaming media and using it. So that allowed for a really good discussion. So we feel that the replies fit the questions. We did a good job on the question writing and a good job on that demographic. We did get some confused answers. However, we found that the faculty were very much in an academic mode and couldn't break out of it. So even if we asked about personal use or things like that, they really were not interested in answering those questions. the big thing is we didn't get as many faculty as we wanted, especially at the second one, which was in the afternoon. We were supposed to get 5 faculty and only 2 showed up and only 1 on time. We had to basically run that session twice. It was fine, but it was not what we were aiming for. We also didn't get any faculty from the business school or the education school, which was unfortunate because those are 2 of our larger schools, and I would have loved to see them represented. Seriously, if anyone has an idea of how to make faculty show up for things that they've already signed up for, besides prayer, please let me know. It is something that I have been working on. We did find a lot more success with our lunch session. I think that if we did this again, we would only schedule over lunch. It seemed to just work better and give people more time. We were going to engage with our liaisons more. I think if we had reached out and worked with our liaisons who know those faculty particularly, we could have maybe particularly made sure we were getting a more even distribution of faculty. And we also wanted to start recruiting earlier. So this is just a very brief thing about what we did and how I got to these results. We took all of our notes, all of our recordings for the 3 of us. We tabulated them. We put them in a big sheet. We made sure we got rid of duplication. And then I went through and coded these into these general categories with these different responses. So that's what I'm looking at now. It was a coding project. So just making sure, oh, didn't mean to pop that up. So just making sure what our departments were. As you can see, we had mostly social sciences and humanities. We did have some folks, a person from public health and a person from nutrition, which I was very happy to see that we did get some of the health sciences represented, as those are the largest school on our campus. So we had this is the fun results time, which means, yay, it's graphs. Everyone loves graphs. So why did people use streaming media? So the major answer that faculty told us was it really helped increase the students' curiosity and engagement. This was usually tied with things like complements reading and cultural exposure. These were often mentioned together. Again, these are all kind of content related things, and these are the things that faculty really focused on. One history professor said, students today are not experienced readers. We can reel the students into the course with streaming video. It's a gateway to reading. So that is where they felt streaming media was valuable in terms of basically making their classes more engaging and making students able to engage with cultures and readings in an easier fashion. However, that's kind of similar for any kind of film. The ones that were really specific to streaming film were that people also were not as mentioned, but they did feel that they was easier for students to use in terms of that they could go to it at any time. There could be multiple people. They didn't have to go into the library and check out a DVD and then watch it. It was just a lot more flexible. They also said that it was student directed. We believe that was usually in reference to students finding films on YouTube and then sharing it with faculty, but they liked that aspect of it. So this is useful for us to understand both why, maybe a little bit about what type of content we might be looking at, because the cultural exposure was not just anthropology. That was public health, that was English, that was history. So that seems to be a really important part of what people are looking for. Maybe that explains our huge amount of foreign films that always are recommended, but also that people are looking for the flexibility. So faculty are, the good thing here, how faculty are finding films, you can see that we've got LibGuides, librarians, and the catalog as our top results. So faculty do seem to know that they should go through the library to find films, which is useful. There's only 2 who use our LibGuide, which is kind of our main thing that we'd like faculty to use. So it means shows that it probably needs to be emphasized. But as you'll see, so good, they know to come to the library, but we also have this here for YouTube. Faculty did mention that they used YouTube to find things, unsurprisingly, and this is especially, as I said, where student-directed questions come from. One faculty member said, YouTube provides a level playing field. Students are encouraged to keep exploring and exploring. And faculty agreed that YouTube was just easier to use. We also looked at what kind of content outside of, so we've got the cultural interest and we've got the complements reading, but we also looked at other types of content. What platforms were they mentioning, whether they like, and what other type things associated with content. Not a huge amount there. We did get 3 people mentioned short segments, and this got general nods of approval from pretty much everyone else. Faculty said that they just felt that things that they could, films that were able to divide it into a lot of different sections were much easier to show than things that were a 60-minute film. That was a lot harder to fit into their content. So they said that was really valuable for them to be able, a platform needed to be able to have like chapters almost of film. There also was general agreement that older content is not desired, and in fact it's something that will really turn students and faculty off. So if we're purchasing something, looking at the fact that it can be divided and looking into the fact that it can has new content and is not just a repackaging of older content, even if it is a new platform, is valuable. Kanopy was the most mentioned platform. This is likely because, as I said, we had just gone to mediated for Kanopy after a huge amount of use, and faculty were not happy. One faculty member called Kanopy the Netflix for academia, which I'm sure makes all librarians feel happy. So that was by far the biggest mention. I do think it's because it is because of that big thing that just happened with it on our campus. But Swank was also very well mentioned, as was YouTube. So so another thing I want to spend a good amount of time on is issues. So we specifically asked about issues in a question, but they came up all over the place. And as you can see here, Kanopy, again, I'm not going to repeat much, but Kanopy, again, #1 issue. Faculty said that it was the biggest issue for them moving to a mediated service was that they could not preview the content anymore. And this led to a discussion basically of how important it is to be able to preview content because they do not feel comfortable showing their students a new film if they've not seen it previously. Numerous things, people were up in arms about this. People wanted other databases to be cut. One person commented, "I am here on the behalf of my entire department to fight in any way possible for Kanopy access." Accessibility was another big thing that came up. This was really in terms of closed captioning. Faculty did tell us that they would not use a program or a video if it did not have closed captioning available. So that's something to also keep in mind if we're purchasing films that they will likely not get used or be ignored if they do not have that accessibility available. In terms of discovery, another issue that came up was that there was a lot of complaints about the challenges of being able to browse films easily or know what collections held good films for each discipline. So faculty felt, one, overwhelmed and they didn't know where to start, even though we have worked to try to put a lot of this information in our catalog. I think this ties in well to another major issue, which was YouTube is easier, which we already kind of talked about. Of course, the YouTube is easier issue brings up other questions. 4 faculty members mentioned that they had trouble with YouTube content disappearing in the middle of classes or between classes. So they felt like it wasn't really stable, even though it was easy to use, and this had actually caused them a lot of stress. And I can tell you that I have received numerous emails from faculty going, "I am teaching a class tomorrow and all of my content is gone." Which ties into another issue. Faculty did not consider this an issue, but I do. We asked about comfortableness with copyright, and only one faculty member mentioned that they were comfortable with it. When asked about copyright, the general response was, "I assume the library handles copyright, or if I'm violating them, I don't know anything for education." So most of them had nothing to say because they had lack of knowledge, and they had a belief that their educational use would protect them in any way. Finally, in good news, there really wasn't that many technical issues reported. Two faculty said that they had very sporadic student issues with going off campus and logging in, but it really didn't seem to be an issue, and faculty were in general very pleased with how smoothly the electronic resources and streaming media worked. So in terms of lessons from this, it seems that the main issues were when they could not get the content they wanted, or when the content did not support their students in terms of accessibility. The use of YouTube and complaints in terms of discovery mean it's an area we need to focus on in terms of making our films easier to search by subject and title, making sure their metadata is in the catalog if we want faculty to find them, and the faculty can know one place they can turn, which I would say would be the catalog. We could also make more specific guides for different areas, but I would say that what we need to do is work with our liaisons to make sure that streaming media is highlighted. We also need to do a better job of copyright outreach, especially around the issues of YouTube and copyright violation, and why one might need to go through the library. We can't really compete with YouTube in terms of how easy it is, but I think that there's a place of being able to convince them why, even though it's easier, it might get them into trouble and leave them in a lurch as compared to library resources. So finally, many of these issues appear to come from a lack of knowledge. And so then we were looking at how we could do this for outreach. When we asked faculty about outreach, the first group agreed that in-person workshops would be the most valuable. They were really interested in knowing more about collections, what collection is best for what topic, and what barriers might exist. They all wanted the fall semester in the end of September because they said spring was just far too busy. They emphasized, this was before the exciting world of the pandemic, that there is just something about talking face to face. I think we would all agree with that. There were also 2 faculty members in the second session who said that they felt that in-person workshops should be handled for people newer to streaming film, and then emails from librarians should be sent up for advanced users to just update them about what new content was coming out or any updates that needed to happen. Again, they both said if in-person workshops happened, they needed to be in either the summer or the fall, and that spring was too busy. So I have not been at UNCG for 3 months, but as I was leaving, I was working on updating the LibGuide, specifically to mention what types of material are available. And we were working to do a large overhaul. A next step would also be doing these workshops in the fall, which we were also working on trying to get together. Of course, these would probably now need to be online. And then finally, a better liaison connection, working with liaisons so they emphasize these streaming films and know what our collections are a little bit better so they can recommend this to different faculty when those questions come up. So that's it. I am very happy to take any questions if we've got time.
Thanks, Kate. So I don't know if you have access to the questions.
I can see, yes.
Okay, or I'm happy to read them too, so.
I am looking through them right now. Okay,
great.
So once you have popularized these resources, how will you handle likely budget cuts that include them? Yeah. So we did do, as I said, a decent marketing campaign. And as you can see, we did experience, that wasn't even a budget cut, but the fact that the increased popularity of the things like Kanopy got out of control. So I think that one of the things that we are going to do, and I can't speak to them what they're going to do now, but I think one of the things that I would have done is, again, looked for more EBM or EBA purchase models, so we would only be purchasing ones that we actually were using. Probably moving as many as possible to mediated, so there's access there, but it's not all access. And then it's, again, looking at usage. There were some ones that just weren't that popular that I think could be easier to cut. I can mention, they of course weren't the big package ones. Of course, Swank and Kanopy, which are like 2 of the most expensive ones, were the most popular because it's how it always works. But a few of our films, like Digitalia and actually Films on Demand, were not that popular. So there were areas that I think you could focus on cutting. Okay, so Films on Demand seems to do well with allowing of short segments, but the content is somewhat dated. It is. That's why it wasn't that popular. So easy streaming event. So of course, I'm trying to think. DocuSeek does. Kanopy is pretty good in terms of dividing it into chapters. Swank, you can't at all. Feature films, you really can't divide into segments, I've found. I would have to go back and look. Those are the ones that stick out on the top of my head from having used them, that they are good at doing short segments. I found, yeah, like the popular ones are not as good in terms of like feature films, and foreign films are usually not as good in terms of the chapters. It tends to be better with documentaries. Okay. I looks like people have answered that. Because I'm like, I did not have issues with Kanopy billing, but I don't know if others have. Okay, let's see. Would you give some examples of liaisons? So liaisons are the words that what we use basically for, that was jargon, and I apologize about that. That is basically a person who is a liaison to different departments. So it's basically our reference and outreach and instruction librarians. We call them liaisons at UNCG. So they are, and we use something called a liaison model, in which faculty, our reference librarians are kind of targeted towards different subject areas and are working in a very close connection with their departments. They're focused less on collection, a lot less on collecting and a lot more on outreach. So when I'm talking about working with liaisons, I'm talking with our outreach and reference folks who are assigned to different departments to have them reach out to those departments, since they are teaching and working extremely closely with all of the faculty. Do you load streaming video as MARC or as knowledge-based collections? We load them as, so UNCG uses OCLC, World Share Management, as its collection, its discovery and ILS. So we would load them as knowledge-based collections, which then with OCLC do pull in the MARC records once those are brought in. So that is a specific thing to OCLC. But so yes, we use them as knowledge-based collections. What do I think of academic video online in comparison with films on demand? I think that I think academic video online, earlier this year, they had last year, they had a refresh in the way that the user interface, and it is a much, much better user interface. It is much cleaner. It is much nicer than Films on Demand. Films on Demand still feels kind of old and outdated. So I think that faculty, when I've talked to them, feel they just really do respond better to that clean design. So in terms of content, I really think it's what you're going for, but I think that academic video online has better historical content and has better, tends to have some newer content. I feel like Films on Demand, as I said, is really often a bit old. The one thing that Films on Demand has recently is that it has been having the PBS videos on it, and that's kind of a big deal. Sorry, there's a lot of questions. Let me know when I need to stop.
Well, and that's what I wanted to ask. We're the last session of the day, and yes, I was checking with the host and wanting to know if you're okay to finish these or
I'm good with that.
Yeah, but just be mindful of everyone's time. There may be some folks who do have to jump off. And
exactly. And I'm happy to just answer these questions now or in the forum. It really is what y'all want. But I
think folks are still all logged on, and
I'll
there's not that
many
left. So
I'll keep on rolling. So did you have faculty members of the faculties of medicine, nursing, or public health? Yes, we did. We had a public health faculty member represented, and we had our nutrition, which is actually tied in with our medical school here as well. So we did have our medical area represented, which was really good. Yes, I have, academic videos online, lots of great clips. Have you any experience with this product? Yes, I do. I just forgot that it did. Do Swank and Kanopy not allow for any previews? They do not. Okay, so I will admit the last time I used them was in March. So if they have from now on, I do not know. But when I last used them, they did not allow for previews if mediated. You could not preview the film at all. We have been talking to, UNCG was talking to Kanopy especially about the issues that this caused our faculty. And we were not getting a huge amount of traction on that. I don't know where that is now, but that was something that we were in conversation with Kanopy, at least, to let them know that that is a very vital thing for our faculty. I don't know if Swank would move much. Since they are focused on feature films, that seems to be really locked down in terms of licensing and use. The film companies have a lot of lawyers. So I think that with that, we really even haven't tried to push for that. So, okay, most of its other comments also, but I'll just read them out. Films on Demand and Swank are doing a pilot allowing ILL for streaming video. Whoa, that is so, okay, sorry, that is so cool. Anyway, wow, that's awesome. You should do a presentation of that because I want to know all about that because that sounds amazing. Yes, Films on Demand did lose its PBS titles, and it's been a deep concern. It's because PBS has decided to make their own platform, but they don't really make it very available to libraries, so it's not great. But that's what happened. So yeah, that kind of hurt Films on Demand even more. Awesome. That was so many good questions.
Thanks, Kate, so much for staying and answering them. And thank you for your presentation. And thanks to all of you who attended. And just a reminder that this session and the others are recorded and they will be posted to our YouTube channel. And if you have any questions that weren't covered in the Q&A, you can add them to the forum and Kate will monitor them through June 2020.